Here's a branding film I had the pleasure of working on a few years ago now for Cathay Pacific. Welcome to the video, Professor. Let's get into this grading breakdown right now. This shot has an extensive node graph, and with its complexities, let's have a look. Here's a before and after. The first thing I like to do is adjust the exposure, instantly brightening the shot up and giving us some contrast. This was shot on a Sony FS7 in S-Log2, so we could retain all the highlights. That way it retains a lot of detail for me to work with in the grade. In this second node, I've balanced the shot before going into any parallel work. As you can see in the roof of the cabin, there are some highlights that we need to address. And as a result, it distracts from the scene of the training crew and the passenger. I isolated that with a power window and a gradient. In this node, once I did roll off the highlights, there was some magenta hue, just as the highlights start to roll back. And working in parallel nodes, I was able to reduce that quite easily. Nodes 12 and 13, I'll make mention here, were the final correction nodes, but we'll come back to those a little bit later on in this video. Moving the shot just a little bit forward now, you can see there's a galley and it looks just a little bit too dark for my liking. Color grading is completely subjective and the roof is still a little bit too green. So with a power window and a track, I managed to isolate the section there and correct it. Looks a little bit more visually pleasing. As a result, the cabin is a bit cold. Just to this node outside the structure, I've warmed the cabin up just a little bit, ever so slightly. And as we track through the shot even further, it reveals that we're not actually in a plane, but in a room. So I added a circular window to the shot and made it a little bit dark, focusing all our attention on the training facility. Again, I used a tracker to move this all the way along through the shot. And then on the next node, I used an outside node and lifted the levels ever so slightly again in the training room, just to add a little bit more focus. In node 12, I still felt there was still a fair bit of magenta in the shot, so I lifted the green levels ever so slightly. In this final node of the training exercise, I added another power window just to give a little bit more emphasis. At this point, just before I warmed up the cabin. This is another video from the vault of the Video Professor, where our motto is shoot, edit, deliver. If you'd like to know more, contact us with the details on your screen.